Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30, on page 1053. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, push it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell.
Phoebe, thank you very much. Well, keep that open in front of you. You might find that it's useful to have that open. I will be referring to some of the verses there. You'll see, if you're using one of the church Bibles, it's there in the middle of column 4. The heading says adultery. You see the heading of the section above says murder, and the heading of the section next is divorce. And you might remember that Jesus is fleshing out some of what he's set up at the start of the Sermon on the Mount. We're getting some sort of worked examples of what that looks like. Now, a few years ago, I think I read it in the newspaper. It was an article all about some answers that have been given by 15 and 16-year-olds who were sitting GCSE exams at the end of their regular school careers. And one particular answer stuck in my mind, and it was an answer that had been given in an RE or an RS paper. The question had been, what is adultery? And the answer that the young person gave is something adults do. You can see what they were thinking, adultery, what's that? Something adults do. It's sort of amusing, judging by the response from the room, not that amusing. But it's sort of amusing, isn't it? Adultery is something adults do. And it would be funny if it wasn't a topic that is so deeply painful and hurtful. It's really serious. So we're going to take 25 minutes or so now to look at what is just really a couple of lines from Jesus' talk there on that hillside so long ago, because this is an important topic. So in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is raising the bar, we might say, a bit like you do in the Olympics when somebody's doing the high jump and everyone's able to do that height, so they raise it a bit more. Can everyone do that? He's raising the bar. He's setting the bar very high. He does it numerous times, but you get it in this repeated phrase. You've heard that it was said, often quoting one of the Ten Commandments or some other teaching from the Old Testament, but I tell you, kind of raises the bar. We get that formula in this section as well. But Jesus is not just interested, and we've seen this in the previous few weeks, he's not just interested in outward conformity to the rules, so people conforming to the rules, but he's actually interested in genuine heart change, people changing inside. I wonder if we've understood the love, the grace, the compassion that there is in that he doesn't want us just to sort of knuckle down and keep the rules. You sometimes see dictatorships or oppressive regimes around the world doing that to their people. Just people have got to be kept in line, and the bat will come down hard on them if they don't. But actually, what Jesus is interested in is genuine heart change, a change for the better. He wants what he knows is best for us. And that comes from a place of great love for us. Well, just to help us understand what's going on here, I've got three things that I want us to see this morning. I want us to see the beauty of what God has made for us. I want us to see the hurt that sin brings into things. Might even say people. And finally, why becoming a pirate is not the answer. We'll get to that in a minute, don't worry. You think, 2 weeks ago we had a banana, now we've got pirates. What's going on? Hopefully it'll become clear when we get to it. Okay, first one, the beauty of what God made for us. We're going to be in Matthew 5, of course, but we're going to look at a few other sections of the Bible just to get some background on this. And right back at the start of the Bible, even in the very first bit, Genesis 1, the Bible tells us this. It's on the screen for us, Genesis 1:28. God blessed them, the people he'd made, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it." So God made man and he made woman. They're naked in the garden, but they're not ashamed. And God tells them to be fruitful and multiply. He'd kind of hardwired into us a desire to want to do that. He designed us to be able to do that. Not just to be able to reproduce, but he designed the method that comes about in the way that he has. Could have done it a different way. Could have done it in a way that was, perhaps we could say, more mundane. But he's designed it in the way that he did. The Bible doesn't just tell us that sex is for reproduction. We're going to flip over to the middle of the Old Testament and to the book of Song of Songs, sometimes called the Song of Solomon. And in chapter 7, there's these words. It's a great love poem, the Song of Songs. There's these words. How beautiful, this is the guy speaking to the lady there. How beautiful your sandaled feet, O prince's daughter. Your graceful legs are like jewels, the work of an artist's hands. Your navel is a rounded goblet that never lacks blended wine. Your waist is a mound of wheat encircled by lilies. Blokes, I wouldn't jot these down as shadow lines. I don't think it translates as well. So, guys, don't go home to your wife and tell her her waist is like a mound of wheat. That might not end well if you try that later. But the point is, the point I'm trying to make, if we'd read on, which I haven't chosen to do, if we'd read on, it all gets a bit 12a. If we'd read on, we'd discover that the Bible doesn't think that sex is just about reproduction. There's a great joy in enjoying a husband or a wife. So God is pro-sex. He invented it. The Bible is not against sex, although it's sometimes misrepresented that way. It's a really vital, important component of how God made us. But not everyone marries, and not all marriages last for all of somebody's adult life. But if you are married, or you do marry, it's worth knowing what Genesis 2:24 says. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife. They become one flesh. Now you could reduce that down to just a sort of, it's a physical description of the reality of the sexual act. But it's much more than just a physical description. This becoming one flesh is describing a much deeper connection that God has built in to sex. It's not simply about the physical. It's about connecting spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It's about the giving to each other of our mind, our heart, our soul. It's about being vulnerable with the other person. And it is designed to come within a covenant relationship. It's a very precious thing, and it's a thing that ought to be protected. I've just got one last verse that we're going to turn to, and that's in 1 Corinthians 6. This is slightly at a tangent, but I hope you'll see how it's significant. Do you not know, this is Paul speaking, do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never. Do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said, two will become one flesh. But whoever is united to the Lord is one with him in spirit. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. I think what he's getting at is it's much more than just, I don't know, I've pinched a sandwich from Tesco and I'm eating it. It's not the sort of level of engagement with our body. There's something much deeper going on here. This connection is much deeper and more significant. We're not just talking about a bodily function here. A writer that I read this week described it in this way. He said, marriage, the proper place for sex, is a covenant relationship. Or we could say it's an agreement to put the other person first. But our society reduces it down to a consumer transaction. Give me what I want. So rather than putting the other person first, it's what can I get out of this? And we can perhaps think of ways that sex has been cheapened in that way. So what are these guys doing? Digging up the road or whatever. They're apparently installing broadband. Get some businesses online. That's what they look like, pipes, don't they? But the fibre optic cables, I believe. So, why am I telling you about broadband? I don't know if you have a connection like that at home. We have one here at the church. We've been with the supplier we were with at church for 2 years. And the connection, I think, has been costing us £22. And they've said now our 2-year deal has expired. It's going to be £59 a month. A month! £59 a month. Are we going to stay with them? No, we're not. Because we don't want to pay £59. And there'll be somebody else who can offer us a cheaper price, won't they? And so we've been shopping around. But maybe you're like that at home. Maybe you've had that at home. There's a great deal on offer to lure you in. But then once they've got you, they think, after the offers. And so you've got to flit around from supplier to supplier. Maybe you're one of those people who just can't face the fact that you think, I'm just going to stick with who I'm with. But many people flit around from supplier to supplier. You might do that with gas and electricity. Hard to do that these days with that. You might do it with your phone line. We are promiscuous, aren't we, with these things? Or many people are. We flit around. We're always on the lookout for a better deal. We don't want long-term commitment because there might be something that supplies something a bit better. I might be happier with that service. We want to say to our current supplier, and I might actually ring them up and say something like this, keep me happy or we're off. We're going, we'll take our business elsewhere. But that is not how we should approach marriage. We're not on the lookout for a better deal elsewhere. We are in it for a long-term commitment. We're not saying, keep me happy or I'm off. A covenant relationship is very different from a commercial transaction. That's what I'm trying to get at there. A covenant relationship says for better or worse, in sickness or in health. And can I say there's some beautiful examples of that in this church family. Of things that have got hard. And people have said, I'm in a covenant relationship. Well, there's a beauty in what God made for us, in the context he designed it to be within, and in what he made. But, and this is really where we're getting to Matthew 5, there's a hurt that sin introduces or brings into things. There's a hurt. Commitment and covenant is what the marriage or Christian marriage should be about. Commitment and covenant. Husband and wife together. And in a way, every time a husband or wife make love, it's in a way reaffirming their marriage vows. Once again saying, all that I am, I give to you. But there's tremendous hurt that can come if that's just one way. If one person in the marriage thinks they're in a covenant relationship, and the other person is treating it as a consumer, they think it's a consumer transaction. They've always got an eye out for a better deal somewhere. Tremendous hurt can come from that. At verse 27 in Matthew 5, so we're on page 1053. Verse 27, you heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. Or to use my illustration from earlier, you've heard it said, you shall not go hunting after a better broadband speed. Shouldn't be looking around. But I tell you, even anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Jesus ups the stakes. It's referring here to men and women. Can I just say that it can be flipped around the other way? It's not just about men treating women badly, although men are very good at being able to do that. Not just don't do it, but look at your heart. So we might think, well, why is this wrong? Even to look? Even to look? Well, it breaks the covenant. Do you remember that I said earlier the covenant is about heart and soul and mind? It breaks God's command. It breaks hearts. And not just the other person's heart, it breaks us. It hurts us. Part of the hurt that sin brings into the things is it hurts us. So what might it look like to look lustfully on somebody else? Well, it could be somebody walking down the road that we see. It could be a neighbour. It could be a colleague at work. In our day and age, it's different to when some of us here were younger, when we used to talk about, it seems a quaint idea now, top shelf magazines. Do you remember that? And they introduced laws in this country, didn't they, to say there had to be covers put on these magazines so children couldn't see them. I haven't been looking at newsagents, but I don't know if you even see those now. It's probably all gone away, hasn't it? Because the internet gives tremendous access to inappropriate images and video, where you can look lustfully on somebody else. But it hurts. It hurts us. It breeds dissatisfaction. Viewing pornography has been described as like learning to drive by just watching Hollywood car chases in films, thinking that's like the normal way to drive. So learning about sex from viewing pornography is like learning to drive by just viewing Hollywood car chases. Somebody said, what you're viewing is people who aren't like you doing things you'll never do with people you'll never meet. It's fake. It's false. Now, I don't mean that sex inside marriage, rather than being like this, should be like the next picture, thanks Matthew. I don't mean it should be like that. but lusting after things, imagining what if, be it with the colleague at work or the images I see on the internet or whatever, it leads to dissatisfaction, it leads to a numbness, a desensitizing, actually an emotional numbness. It hurts us. Sex is something God has designed for inside marriage to strengthen the connection we have with our spouse at a deep level. And in viewing pornography, we're not connecting at all, or in a very ruined and spoiled way. It hurts us. But it hurts others as well. There are sad consequences that can come from this within a marriage. But even if we're not married, there can be sad consequences for our future husband or wife. Expectations that we've built up in our heads. And then there's the consequences for the men or women that we objectify. That we sort of mentally demean and remove dignity from. It's corrosive and spoils. When we lived in Buxton, we lived in a house, a bit like some of the houses around here, a kind of Victorian house. And somebody had done a kind of terrible job in the years before our ownership of painting the doors in the house. And we thought it'd be great if they were just back as they originally would have been, just as wood. Wouldn't it look lovely if they were just the nice timber doors? Now what you can do is you can get a sort of heat gun and a scraper and scrape the door, and it's very hard on all fiddly bits, and you can sand them and all this kind of malarkey. Or you can do what we did, which is just take them off their hinges. A man came and collected them in the van. They went off to Stockport, and they were dipped in a sort of acid bath or something. Dip them in this thing. And all the paint is removed through this horrific chemical process. I don't know what the stuff is, but sort of dissolves all the paint. Saves all that elbow grease of, doing all that thing. And they deliver the doors back. It sounds great, a great quick fix. You might be thinking, oh, give me the phone number of these people here. But I tell you the thing we didn't realise before is it was a quick fix, but some of the doors came back a bit warped. They were cracked. Some of the wood had kind of shrunk. The chemicals that had been used spoiled the wood and kind of dried it out in a weird way, removed all the natural oils and things that would have been in the wood, left the wood looking very dull and lifeless, and actually required some TLC, some tender loving care to restore the wood and try and bring back some life to it. It seemed like it was going to be a great quick fix, but there were unintended consequences that kind of spoiled things. God's warning us here about quick fixes that have unintended consequences and that spoil things, that actually bring great hurt to us and to others. So finally, our time's nearly gone, but finally, what do we need to do? And that's the third thing I wanted to see, and it's why becoming a pirate's not the answer. What do I mean? Well, I don't want to walk back in here next week and see everyone with an eye patch. Do you see what it says here? 29, if your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. Better to lose one part of the body than for the whole body to be thrown into hell. Don't come with an eye patch next week. Well, I don't think I want a room full of people with parrots on their shoulders or whatever. So verse 29 and 30 are talking dramatically. It then goes on to talk about cutting your hand off if that's what causes you to stumble. It is drastic language. Jesus is saying, you're probably underestimating how serious this is. This is very serious. It's actually a life or death reality. Drastic measures may well be necessary. Things that in other circumstances you would not even consider. Gouging out, chopping a hand off. I mean, you really think things have got serious when that's a serious consideration, isn't it? So what might that look like when talking about this? It doesn't really feel like we're taking it seriously when we think, oh, it might mean beefing up our internet filter on the broadband router or whatever. Having some accountability software installed on my computer. Might mean not going to certain places. Might mean not meeting certain people. It could mean for some people having to change their job. It could mean changing habits or customs. It might mean turning off certain TV programs or choosing never to watch them in the first place. There's a thing in British television, there are rules around what can be shown. And as you maybe know, there's a 9 o'clock, it's called the 9 o'clock watershed. The rules relax after 9 o'clock because young children will be in bed. But what in reality that is after 9 o'clock, it's an absolute free-for-all. There's some really quite inappropriate things on TV. And that's before you even get into streaming services and other things that you can access. The point is not that we gouge out our eye or cut off our hand, but that this is serious and you will know what needs to happen in your life to protect you from these errors. But can I just say, if you're a Christian, we have a great weapon in this fight. In fact, the number one weapon that we have really in this fight is not all of those things I've just described, but it's this. It's seeing Jesus as better. Seeing Jesus as better than what all these things claim to offer. Seeing Jesus as the most important. So I don't want to embarrass Mrs. Walkinshaw here, but Lucy is a better wife to me if she puts Jesus as more important in our relationship than me. If she thinks that Jesus is more important in our relationship than I am, she's actually a better wife to me. If Jesus comes number one in Lucy's life, then that means she'll be a better wife to me. Why? Because Jesus wants her to be a great wife to me. Jesus will help her with priorities, and the same applies the other way around. If we're single, we can be a more fulfilled single person if we put Jesus before anything else. And that might mean that we're putting Jesus before actually getting married or being in a relationship. If I'm more satisfied with him, I'll be more satisfied with the situation he's put me in. We can ask him for help, to help us to see the opposite sex as sisters and brothers, not as objects. We can ask the Holy Spirit to change our hearts, help us to be repulsed by dehumanizing and objectifying people. And can I say, because of Jesus, because of his death and resurrection, forgiveness and a fresh start is possible, whatever we've done or seen, or however we've fallen. So that's a great weapon we've been given. He's also given us a great weapon in just our wisdom. Just putting wise things in place, and that might be some of those things I referred to earlier. But there's a third thing, and verse 29 gives us just a hint of this. Better to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. Reminds us there's an eternal dimension to all this. It's of eternal importance. If we're in an earthly marriage, or if we view and observe earthly marriages, they're supposed to point us to the ultimate marriage, the ultimate covenant relationship between Jesus and his church, that eternal reality. In fact, Ephesians 5 says that marriage now, earthly marriage, is just a dim foretaste of that future reality. So just as we close then, if we're single or if we're married, let's take to heart what Jesus is warning us about here. And let's prayerfully consider if there's things we need to change to help us to line up with what Jesus is saying.